Red had this ball with him, and he said, "Look, I know you're trying to raise money for kids in trouble. You may be able to die, and I want to give you this ball." So I've had that ball for many years, and Darren, you know what I've been trying to do on another thing.
What I want to do, so we're not talking for an hour, is just ask you guys a couple of questions that have to do with the ball, kids in trouble, and Red. So I guess you touched on it just now, Harold, but how did you and Harold get together? You said since you were 14, and I don't want to do the math, but that was a while back. So how did you come together first?
We're from the same neighborhood, and we grew up pretty much at the same rec centers. Then Harold is before me, so he was at Spingarn High School before I got there. But we've known each other, as he said, since I was 14. I think Harold is either 4 or 5 years older than me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And where does Red enter the picture, or when does Red enter the picture for you guys?
Well, Red entered the picture for me when I think I was working with the Department of Recreation as a roving leader, working with youth gangs in the Washington, D.C. area. And I just happened to run into Red up in Silver Spring at a basketball, outdoor basketball game. And I told him I had a talk show. He said, "Well, call me, I'll be on." And that's how we started and became great friends. Red and Muhammad Ali put me on the talk show map. I mean, they were the ones that gave me all the credibility that I earned as I went through the talk show. And Dave, being from DC, he can tell you about his relationship with Red and how Red would travel from playground to playground. Go ahead, Dave, take it.
Sure. He was one of those guys that he wasn't a scout or anything, but he just went from playground to playground to see guys play on all of the different playgrounds around the city. And I think he was so well respected when he saw somebody that he really liked, that he thought had a future. There were a lot of guys that got together and talked about that. And so that's how a lot of us got to know each other. We guys in my era, in my area, we go all over the city playing guys from different parts of the city. And it was rec centers, it was Boys and Girls Club. And it was just a wonderful time to grow up in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. And tell me something about Kids in Trouble, and then how you and Dave, or either one of you can answer, how you and Dave came together with that as well as basketball in general.
Right. Well, Dave and I came together in Kids in Trouble. I never can forget it. They had a shooting out at our high school, Spingarn High School. And I was working, as I said, with roving leaders and with youth gangs around that time. And my boss, Stanley Anderson, said, "Harold, you need to go out there to Spingarn. That's your school. Go out there and find out what's happening." So I went out there, and they had cops all over the place, kids. And I was trying to find out something, but these kids, they were acting so simple. I said, "Man, this is a dead-end street for me." So I went across the street where Dave and a lot of guys hung out in the evening, went to a place called Sporty's. They sold these great hot dogs. So I went over there and got me a hot dog and a soda, and I sat out front by the bus stop, and I heard these young guys talking about, "Man, the NBA All-Star game is in Baltimore this weekend." And it hit me right there. I said, "Man, Dave is going to be on the NBA All-Star team." I said, "I need to go over there and see if I can catch up with him." So that Saturday morning, I drove over to Baltimore, and I sit outside the arena waiting for him guys to come to practice. And sure enough, here comes Dave with Bob Lanier. And he saw me. He said, "Man, what are you doing over here?" I said, "Man, I come to catch up with you." And I told him the situation at Spingarn. These kids were talking revenge about the shooting. And I needed him to come in after the game on Monday morning, to Spingarn and speak to these kids and see if we could bring things to a peaceful level. He said, "No problem, I'll be there." And sure enough, on that Monday morning, they walked into the auditorium, was packed, and the kids gave him a standing ovation. Why did that happen? Because they had just seen him on television that Sunday, and that was the icing on the cake. Dave, take it from there.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that this didn't continue. We didn't want it to spread. And we wanted kids to understand that there may be disagreements, but it shouldn't end up in fights and somebody shooting somebody. So we just talked about how we grew up, the role models that we had, whether they were our coaches, whether they were older guys in school ahead of us, whether they're old guys on the playgrounds, et cetera, et cetera. So we just tried to give them some insight in terms of, you don't have to try to hurt somebody because you disagree with them. And it worked out very well. And then, Harold had asked me to come down. I remember Harold asked me to come down to Anacostia.
Mm-hmm.
And, you talked about kids in trouble at that point, what you were doing to try to rectify some of the problems some of the kids had. Mm-hmm. And you needed some help. You needed another voice. You needed somebody that these kids could relate with. And Harold had been doing this all along. And I was doing some of the same kind of stuff in Detroit. But when I found out what he was doing at my home in D.C., I wanted to be a part of that also, and he invited me in. So, one thing led to another, and Harold's been doing this seems like all his life.
Yeah. One of the things too I got to give Ray a lot of credit for is that he was able, through his his contacts and his influence, I was able to bring Sam Jones, Casey Jones, the Boston Celtics to DC for my celebrity tennis tournaments, celebrity fashion shows. They started participating, man. And Boston Celtics had a lot to do with my success, because once I got them in fold, everybody else started following their lead. I had athletes coming from all over the country to participate in my celebrity fashion shows and tennis tournaments, man. So yeah, Red played a great part in that. You can see photos of Sam Jones out on the playground or at my Christmas toy parties, man, and Casey Jones. You'll see Earl Monroe. You'll see Sugar Ray Leonard. You'll see all these guys there, man. They followed the lead of Red Auerbach.
And am I right remembering from what you told me, Harold, that the ball that we're offering
So I got a lot of the athletes, man. They would write checks and help out. And Red, we were having lunch one day. He told me, "Say, come on, I want you to meet me for lunch." I thought we were going to some big restaurant. We went to a little a thing on the street. The guy selling hot dogs, kosher hot dogs. So Red said, "Okay, let's go around to my brother's shop." He had a brother named Zane. They had Oppenheimer's jewelry, and this is where Red and Sam and Bad News Bonds, we would meet around there. So Red had this ball with him, and he said, "Look, I know you're trying to raise money for kids in trouble. You may be able, Dottie and I want to give you this ball." So I've had that ball for many years, and Darren, you know what I've been trying to do on another project. I said maybe this will help me raise money for kids in trouble and get this other project off the ground. And so that's when I turned back to you, Darren. I said, "Darren, I got this ball, man, and maybe worth something. You want to take a look at it? Maybe you guys can auction it off up at Freeman's." And he said, "Harold, send it. Let me take a look at it." And that's why we're here.
Exactly. That's why we're here. And I want to thank you both for everything, for your time, for your memories. And we're going to sign off now.